Now joined by Susan Smith, principal with the Blue Sky Strategy Group. Tim Powers is chair of Summa Strategies. And Kim Wright is principal with Wright Strategies. Hello to the three of you.
Hello.
Hi, Michael.
Susan, I'll get you to start us
Michael.
out. Hey, Tim. Susan, I'm going to get you to start us out here because David Johnston, as we know, is staying put. Are you surprised by this? You know, given that the majority of MPs want him to step down, shouldn't he be listening to the will of Parliament?
Well, he's not an officer of Parliament, Michael, and he was appointed by the government. So he's very right when he says that that is in fact the case. I think it's a challenging situation when Parliament has twice said they don't have confidence in him. But I do think that's become a partisan issue. It's not about his ability. It's not about his skill. It's not about the fact that he is supposed to be getting to the root of any potential foreign interference in a Canadian election in our democracy. That the opposition seems to have moved away from that, and they're just going straight at Mr. Johnston because they feel that that's a path to Mr. Trudeau. I think it's unfortunate. He's an upstanding Canadian, eminently qualified to do the work, but it can be seen as a bit of a distraction from the outright objective of the exercise, which is to determine has there been foreign interference in an election.
Okay, Tim, I'll get you to weigh in here because I think just for clarity, you know, to listen, for example, to Jagmeet Singh, he says this has nothing to do with Mr. Johnston. They think he's an upstanding person, but the NDP believe that the appearance of bias is just too strong, too apparent. So if that's the case, Tim, will Johnston's second report carry any real weight when it comes to foreign interference if this appearance or this apprehension of bias exists?
Well, if that were the case, though, I mean, I think everybody's playing politics here. So start with the NDP's politics, Michael. If they were so serious about this and so concerned about it, why wouldn't they push to withdraw their confidence in the agreement they have with the government? I mean, they're being a bit like paper tigers here, and I think that's a bit insulting. You know, Mr. Johnston, I think, is digging in because he's got nothing to lose at this point in his life. He believes he's doing good work. I think all the parties here, unfortunately, are not helping the bigger issue, which is the matter of whether or not and how pervasive foreign interference is. Because everybody's focusing on Mr. Johnston, and they're not focusing on the key elements in the report. Things like Aaron O'Toole revealed earlier this week when he became aware that he was subject to a lot of interference, to use that word, by Chinese authorities. So, you know, Mr. Johnston is a convenient political tool for everybody, including the Prime Minister, because it prevents him from having to talk to the substantive issues here. So I think they're happy to use Mr. Johnston as a shield, and that's unfortunate for all of us because we've got to get at the meat Mr. Johnston brought up in his first report.
Yeah, okay, and Kim, I'll have you jump in because, you know, that is this interesting point, whether or not this is just all political theater, because Johnston does say that his recommendations, especially the second one, will go to preventing foreign interference from happening again. And is that not what this is truly about, especially if Johnston says that there is no evidence to suggest the government failed to act on the information it had?
Well, what they had and how they portrayed it is actually one of the challenges that we've been seeing, frankly. You know, we look at Bill Blair, you know, couldn't access a portal, which seems a little implausible to me. But even then, he would have a briefing package, a paper copy. Shocking that we still use paper copies of things, and that he would be able to have had access to that. At the end of the day, there's so many things in here that pass credibility in general public. And when you go back to Mr. Johnston's press conference, which was, well, gosh, if you'd seen the evidence I saw, you'd believe this was all fine and dandy too. Sure. Except for you're not actually showing us what the evidence is. You're saying, trust me. And what we've had for months now, going back, you know, into February, where the Prime Minister started with, these are all scurrilous allegations. There's absolutely no truth to it. To, well, there might be some truth, to, hey, we're going to put millions of dollars into a new Office of Foreign Interference in the budget. And then we're going to have this special rapporteur. Like, there's so many elements of this. Had they actually months and months and months ago said, you know, maybe we should just have a open airing of this as much as we can with redacted documents and all the rest of it, and get to the heart of this to make sure that Canadians believe that our elections are run without foreign interference from China, from Russia, and any other agents that are trying to knock on the doors.
Can I push back though there on Kim, because just take Mr. Johnston's side a bit here. He does say that if it were to be anything more than what he is suggesting, it would be compromising to national intelligence, national security,
yes.
And so how does that not? And we're also talking about a former Governor General who's making these conclusions. Can we not give him the benefit of the doubt on that level?
No.
And a legal scholar, too.
Hold on one second, Susan. I was asked the question here. The reality is that there were lots of things that can go forward. Yes, some of it will be redacted. Are you suggesting that the Air India inquiry or the inquiry on Meher didn't have security implications? Like, come on. That is an easy say, oh, well, it's security, it's national security, and maybe Five Eyes are going to be mad at us. This has been the talking point from the beginning. But there are some things where we know that parliamentarians, at least 3, potentially more, have been targeted. And so how do we know this? How do we get to the bottom of this? How do we keep our democracy safe? Those are the things that every parliamentarian is asking themselves. And what we saw in that vote this week is that even Liberals have said, oh, wait a minute, we actually do need to get to the bottom of this. This is actually not passing the smell test in our communities. And they're going to have to go back on the barbecue circuit this summer and have to face some really harsh criticisms. Who knew what, when, and how do we get to the bottom of this?
Okay, so Susan, let's now flip to the other point then. Why not just call public inquiry? Because as you know, the Prime Minister is not beholden to the special rapporteur. He says he'll follow up. He's not really beholden by any law on this. And in the meantime, Liberals are being painted as participating and benefiting from a cover-up.
So I'm on the record at the beginning of all this, Michael, saying, a public inquiry might be a simpler thing to do, but it's very, very important to underline that these are issues of national security. So like the Meher inquiry that Kim is referring to, there were many, many parts of that were in camera. So when you're talking about issues of national security, whether it's a special rapporteur or a public inquiry, it is not an airing of all the laundry and all things. And I want to take a step back. I mean, if this is about potential interference in our democracy, the whoever is doing it, whatever the foreign interfering are, and we believe it's China, it's working right now in the sense of forget about elections. Look at this exact snapshot of moment in time, because what they've done is they've got the politicians, the opposition politicians, talking about the special rapporteur instead of about the issues. So I think what everybody needs to do is take a deep breath, let Mr. Johnston do his job. He's a former constitutional scholar. He's a former Governor General. He's had national security clearance level for years. He's an eminent Canadian. He's going to hold public hearings. There will be things that are aired in public. But guess what, everybody? You don't get to see all the national security stuff. And that's what people have to understand about this. So I think the noise could have been avoided if we'd had a public inquiry right from the get-go, but we're not there. But we do have an eminent Canadian who's highly qualified to do the job. We should stop squawking and let him get down to doing his job and put forward a report that's going to remind everybody that we have a strong and robust democracy. And if there are some potential chinks in that armor as a result of foreign interference, that our institutions are doing the things that they need to be doing.
Okay, listen, I obviously we're going to keep following the story, but I've got 3 minutes left here. I need to ask each of one of you very quickly, a quick go-around here. Danielle Smith and the future of Alberta-Ottawa relations. She says she wants to reset that relationship following her majority win in Alberta. What should we expect? Tim, I'll begin with you.
Well, there's only been one Conservative premier in the last 15 years, actually 18 years, Michael, who served out a full term. That was Ralph Klein. And she, of course, invoked Ralph Klein the other day. The bigger challenge for Danielle Smith will be, can she hold her caucus together? And that will determine what she does in the federal-provincial relationship front. I think, as all premiers have done before from Alberta premiers, though, she will focus on natural resources. She'll have allies and all of that. But her impact will only be as strong as her tenure as leader of the United Conservative Party of Alberta.
Okay, Kim?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, whether she gets to stampede this year without calls for her resignation is always the betting game in Alberta politics. And I think that we've seen articles already, the bloodletting, and those are par for the course. Of all of our viewers will have seen those over the years after every campaign. But when the calls start coming from inside the House, especially such a hard foundation of that House in UCP politics, it's going to be a challenge for her to manage both the Premier's office and the party.
The call's coming from inside the House. Susan, what do you think about the expectations here?
I think it will be impossible for Danielle Smith to change her spots when it comes to her views with Ottawa and her I don't think she's going to be able to help herself, quite frankly. She hasn't been able to help herself the whole way along. And quite frankly, if she doesn't do a good job and she dials up the rhetoric big time against Alberta, ironically, what she'll do is she'll help the federal Liberals. Because if she can't help herself and she can't manage some of the wackier ideas that she tends to put forward, the rest of the country will look at her and look at her close alliance with Pierre Poilievre and then take another hard look at the Liberals when it comes time to the next election.
Okay. Well, again, we continue to watch. Susan, Tim, Kim, thank you for this. I appreciate the time.
Oh, it's
Thanks.
a pleasure.
Thank you.